You have your religious right. Of course, I'm being sarcastic on the devil worship front. But this just shows how they've distorted all this. Now, continuing, family threatened with jail for cheering graduating relatives. That article's on Infowars.com, and there's video. $500 fines for expressing support. And, you know, it's a big deal in this low-income, mainly black area. Big deal for anybody to be getting out of high school. And folks cheer and get excited. I remember people cheered at my graduation for folks. My family really didn't because, I mean, it was kind of embarrassing. But the point is that it just shows how they'll throw you in jail or fire you for feeding a homeless person or cheering at a graduation or kick you out or whatever if you say you love Jesus. But mega banks can steal the whole country blind, spy on us without warrants, do whatever they want, and it's supposedly A-OK. All right, we'll be back with a major whistleblower in the fight to restore our republic and the Fourth Amendment. I'm Alex Jones. Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com are flagship sites.
Just passed by Congress, the USA Freedom Act. Well, not real freedom, but the kind of freedom we act like we have in the USA. Think of it as CISPA for phone companies, a kind of cozy symbiotic relationship between the corporate oligarchy and the authoritarian government. The phone companies will now store your info and pass it on to the paranoid government on demand. And the phone companies will be granted freedom from liability. Now that's real freedom, the kind only the big guys get.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more. Now Congress will be notified whenever the secret FISA court, well, it's not really a court, just a single judge, reinterprets the law. That's great, because they've been changing the law and not even telling us. Now they're going to let us know. Isn't America great? The USA Freedom Act. Offer void where prohibited by law. For Infowars.com, I'm David Knight.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kirk Wiebe joins us after spending 4 years that included tours of duty in Turkey and Japan with the Intelligence Arm of the United States Air Force. During 63 to 67, Kirk attended Indiana University, receiving master's degrees in Russian language. In 74, the year I was born, Kirk then headed east to work for the National Security Agency, retiring in October 2001, same time that Benny and Drake and others left, and then, of course, got SWAT-teamed, and they tried to set him up. That's back in the news today, dealing with the NSA. Judge probes destruction of evidence in NSA leak prosecution, and that was of Thomas Drake. So they've come after these heroes who just told the truth. He was awarded the Meritorious Civilian Service Award, the NSA's second highest honor for important work done on foreign strategic weapons systems. 2002, when it was clear that the NSA was headed down the wrong path, Kirk, along with fellow NSA retirees Bill Binney, Ed Loomis, and former senior staff for the White House Select Subcommittee on Intelligence, Diana Rourke, initiated a Department of Defense Inspector General complaint about mismanagement and the waste of hundreds of millions of dollars to the National Security Agency. And I won't go over all the rest of it, but they were persecuted by for going through the system, trying to reform it. And now we've had the USA Freedom Act. Now we have the USA Freedom Act signed, and they're claiming it's a reform. From what I've seen and what you just heard David Knight break down, it's actually just a shell game. Kirk Wiebe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Alex Jones, it's a distinct honor to be with you.
Well, it's great to have you, sir. I could ask a lot of questions here, but why don't you start at the beginning and just recap what you've witnessed being inside the NSA, what's happened since, and then I'd like to get your take on the USA Freedom Act.
What's happened in a nutshell, Alex, is the very thing that Eisenhower, President Eisenhower, on the night of January 17th, 1961, warned all of us about. And that is the, undue influence of the military-industrial complex on the ability of this government to function the way the founders intended it to, unencumbered by outside influences other than those expressly set up to deliver the voice of the people. So we have people willing to sacrifice the security of the nation for money. It's really corruption that is the real elephant in the room in the background here behind all of this.
So you're saying the running of this tens of billions of dollars a year grid is its own evil of itself, separate from the undue power and influence this gives the special interest, corporate and governmental, that are able to have access to the information. That ends the level playing field.
Absolutely. It's gone. If Eisenhower saw what's in place today, what has really become the military-industrial intelligence complex, we need to add another I, because of what's gone on in the intervening 50 years since Eisenhower was in office. That thing is huge. It has multiple tentacles into various states, who elect senators and congressmen, who in turn benefit from the businesses in their states, who are milking the government trough of money for billions of dollars, many of them getting rich at our expense. All of this causing a constitutional crisis because we have a Congress more unwilling to defend the Constitution than ever in the history of the country.
Did you see the clip yesterday, speaking on the Senate floor, where the leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, got up and just said there is no illegal spying? We've seen Senator Rubio say the exact same thing, just with a straight face. It's the equivalent of telling us that Santa Claus is real. It's so over the top.
Yeah, it is. It is. You know, here we have two senators, one of whom wants to become president, willing to stand there and lie and not wince about it, not have any shame, none. And this is what we're under. Either that, Alex, or the two of them are so ignorant of what NSA is really up to. And, you know, I really do believe NSA's made it difficult for many people in Congress to understand what it's really doing. But as long as Congress isn't willing to do what I call earnest and real oversight, this is what we're going to get.
We have a major NSA whistleblower joining us right now, accuracy.org, exposefacts.org. But I want to play the Mitch McConnell clip that we aired last hour in case new listeners just tuned in. This is the new party line. They're kind of going back to the old line that Bush had, that there is no illegal spying going on, even though whistleblowers at AT&T and others were going public, and they knew full well what was happening. Now it's a bipartisan push by Obama and Republican leaders to just say, are you insane? There's no such thing as, warrantless spying. It's not going on. Here's the leader of the Senate.
It speaks to the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects. But these records belong to the phone companies. And let me remind the Senate, the standard for reasonable, articulable suspicion is that the terror suspect is associated with a, quote, foreign terrorist organization, end quote, as determined by a court. Nobody's civil liberties are being violated here.
Kirk Wiebe, NSA whistleblower, what is your view on his statement?
It's specious. I don't know what else to call it. While he is technically correct, he's alluding to a legal precedent that if most people understood it or even heard about it, they would shake their head and say, what has happened to the profession of law and interpretation of the law? The authority that Mitch McConnell is inferring here, when he says we have no right to privacy of our phone records, is a case called Smith versus Maryland from the year 1979, when none of us even knew how to spell smartphone, let alone know what it means. It's from a time when the court said, yes, the police were not doing anything wrong when they tapped a dialed number between a criminal and his victim and used that evidence to prove the connection between the criminal and the victim, who he had been harassing via telephone.
So they had probable cause. They had probable cause, and it was a suspect.
Exactly. Now, that went to the Supreme Court because the criminal said, you can't use that information. The court said, oh, yes, we can. Yes, the government can. Yes, the police can. You don't have any expectation of that not being used. But you're right. The context was probable cause. That's a lot different than demanding the phone company hand over all their records about every American, including every innocent American, which, of course, is the majority of those records.
Well, you bring up Eisenhower. I want to play a clip of his famous speech here in a moment. He talked about a technological elite controlling the military-industrial complex being the threat. That's the full quote. But it's so clear they've already gone this far, and they're debating Patriot Act metadata when we know they're recording 80-something% of the actual audio, and corporations are in a race to do it as well. It just doesn't stand. I mean, even USA Today is admitting the DEA spies on everything without, warrants, and then goes and creates fake court cases. So I'm wondering what comes next in this slide into tyranny. But here's President Eisenhower warning us, and I guess today they demonize him like they're demonizing Rand Paul.
We must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
But then we have Governor Rick Perry outgoing saying you cannot question the military in a speech last week, but the military is run by the politicians. It's just an insane statement. Kirk, stay there. We're going to come right back to you. ExposeFacts.org. Kirk Wiebe is an American patriot, high-level NSA whistleblower. They were all persecuted. We're going to talk some about that when we come back. They went through channels, so they got harassed, indicted, SWAT-teamed, fake court cases made up. Just incredible. Stay with us. Here's James Clapper famously being questioned by Wyden in Congress and lying and saying, spying? We don't spy on anything. In fact, what's spying at the NSA? It's like saying, the sun and the sky? Never heard of that. Here's the famous clip.
The NSA director was at a conference, and he was asked a question about the NSA surveillance of Americans. He replied, and I quote here, "The story that we have millions or hundreds of millions of dossiers on people is completely false." The reason I'm asking the question is, having served on the committee now for a dozen years, I don't really know what a dossier is in this context. So what I wanted to see is if you could give me a yes or no answer to the question, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
That's lying to Congress under oath right there. And now his lawyer 2 weeks ago said he just basically had some brain flatulence and had forgotten as the head of the NSA that they had any data on Americans. I mean, that's got to be one of the biggest lies in history. I mean, Pinocchio has nothing on this guy. I don't think Pinocchio should be the symbol of lying anymore, Kirk. I mean, shouldn't it be Clapper?
You know, Alex, almost nobody knows this, but when I was in the process of earning that Meritorious Civilian Service Award for work against foreign strategic weapons, Jim Clapper was one of my primary customers for intelligence, because at that point he was stationed with the U.S. Strategic Air Command out in Omaha, Nebraska. And I had the utmost regard for him. So I know him personally, have sat in rooms with him, talked to him. And for me to watch what you just showed is a